I'm sure South Park needs no introduction. It aired all the way back in 1997 and has been going ever since, and it's still surprisingly good to this day, at least in my opinion. Of course, not every episode is amazing, but overall I still really like South Park. So with its popularity, of course there has to be crossovers with other media. There were movies, board games, books, and of course, video games. And while some of the early games weren't anything amazing, the Stick of Truth really stands out above the rest. Stick of Truth is a fully open-world RPG, which is a genre that doesn't seem like South Park would go for it, but it works very well. Before I get into the story, did you know there's technically a prequel story to this game? In Season 17, a mini-series of episodes has everyone waiting to storm the mall on Black Friday. Only thing is, everyone is split on getting an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4, which leads to separate groups being made to decide which console is better. Can't even watch South Park without console wars being shoved in my face. Anyways, at the end of the series, Bill Gates beats the head of Sony to death, they decide that console wars are stupid, and they decide to just start playing with a stick. I'm not even joking when I say they straight up show the artwork for the game at the end of the episode. They intended for this story to be connected to the game. Even Matt and Trey said themselves they consider Stick of Truth to be canon to the series. So it's cool to see these stories cross over in that sense. The story in the game revolves around the main character moving into South Park and getting to know everyone. After you first move in, your parents tell you to go make some friends. After you leave your house, you save Butters from getting attacked, and he invites you to play their game with him and his friends. After Butters takes you to Cartman's house, Cartman explains that the Stick of Truth was some all-powerful weapon that another army stole, which plunged them into war. After managing to get it back, it immediately gets stolen in an ambush on Koopa Keep, which is where the Stick of Truth is being held, which leads to Clyde getting banished from space and time.
It's gone. What? The Stick of Truth. The elves got it. That was your one goddamn job, Clyde! To guard the Stick of fucking Truth! Clyde, you are hereby banished from space and time! What? No!
The main character is now tasked with gathering other characters in South Park so they can retaliate against the elves to get the stick back. After a little while, you end up getting the stick back. After this victory, the main character goes home to go to sleep. But in the middle of the night, you end up getting kidnapped by aliens who implant an anal probe inside of you. Something I wish I didn't have to say, but this is South Park we're talking about here. After you escape and crash the ship into the mall, it ends up spilling a goo that, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, but a goo that turns people into Nazi zombies. I know, it's absolutely absurd, but let's continue on. Do you remember during the beginning of the game, when Cartman banished Clyde from time and space? Yeah, I guess he took that really personally, since he ends up creating his own Nazi zombie army to try and get revenge after stealing the stick for himself. After the elves and humans join sides to take the stick back from Clyde, they realize they have too few allies and retreat to recruit more. After we recruit more allies, Cartman decides it's time to storm Clyde's castle to get the stick back. After we make our way through the castle and defeat a resurrected Nazi zombie chef, Clyde decides he's just not playing anymore. And while you may think the game ends here, oh no, it keeps going. The military drops into Clyde's castle to try to abduct the protagonist simply because he makes Facebook friends really easily. Kenny then betrays the group by using the stick against us. After losing in battle, Kenny then infects himself with the Nazi zombie goo, and the only way to defeat him is by, and I know I've said this before, but seriously, this is actually the most crazy thing I've ever heard, the only way to defeat Kenny and get the stick back is by farting on his balls, which then turns into a cleansing light that cures all of the Nazi zombies. I'm confident no sane person wrote this story. If you've ever seen South Park, a main plot like this sounds so simple on the surface, but immediately goes to so many places you never thought it possibly could. Places like going into someone's anus to defuse a bomb, or fighting off an underpants gnome while your parents have sex in the background. I love this game. The main campaign felt so much like a real episode of South Park, which had so many random and insane things going on all at once. The game is relatively short. It only took me about 13 hours to finish the game, but there is a lot of side quests and items to find. You can also revisit old locations to find loot that you might have missed. There's even some replay value since you can make different choices in the game or play on the hardest difficulty. Speaking of choices, when you first start the game, you have 4 classes to pick from. You can be a thief, or a mage, or a Jew. With these different classes, you have different skills to choose from, such as a thief being able to stun enemies and things like that. This game has a lot of different customization to choose from. You can add different mods to your equipment for different effects, such as a sword that causes bleeding or a chest plate that heals 5% damage each turn. Things like this enhance the gameplay a bit more since you can create a weapon to your liking. It gives you more options for weapons, which is always nice to see. Speaking of gameplay, the team working on this game did a great job. While this is a turn-based RPG, the game makes you time button presses while doing attacks or guarding. This helps keep the combat more engaging since you have to pay attention to attacking and guarding. You still will take damage even if you guard perfectly, but hey, at least you take less. I always appreciate it when games try to make turn-based combat more interactive and less repetitive. While I do love games like Earthbound and Amori, during most of the random encounters, you'll just be using basic attacks the whole fight. Each enemy has a different attack pattern, which means you'll have to time your button presses differently for different attacks. This is another great idea, since not only does it keep it interactive, it also tries to keep it fresh since not every attack will be the same. While you can use your basic attacks, you have other options, such as a bow and fart attacks. I'll get into that last part in a minute. Sometimes enemies will be too far away or will have a shield bar. If an enemy is too far away, you have to attack using your bow, nothing too complicated there. But if someone has a shield bar, you can either use a powerful shot or use 3 less powerful shots. Each hit will decrease their shield, and when that shield is gone, you can actually do some damage. Along with your bow, you also have fart attacks. These attacks are also unique. They can damage all enemies, cause a gross out ailment, or even stun enemies. I got through pretty much the entire game without using them, but at least you have options for combat. And it really wouldn't be a South Park game without some good old fart humor. This game has a lot of features during its combat, which is a good thing. It makes the combat feel fleshed out, and has a lot of things to keep it interesting. I think more games with similar mechanics would be awesome to see. It's not that regular turn-based combat is bad, far from it, but it's nice to see developers try to add new things to the format to help it stand out and be more fun. I do wish this game was a little bit longer. The main story only takes around 10 hours to finish, and there aren't a whole lot of side quests. The only reason I bring this up is because I enjoyed the game a lot. I wish there was more to do with it. But I'm also glad it didn't drag on too long. While I do love RPGs as a genre, they can eat up a lot of your time. I'm looking at you. But I'd prefer this game to be short and sweet rather than take over 50 hours to finish. Stick of Truth is a short, fun game to play through that I think any South Park fan would enjoy. There's a lot of cool secrets and plenty of references and Easter eggs to past episodes. This game really does feel just like an episode of the show. The way the characters interact and how you can visit other side characters really enhances the way this town is portrayed. I think if you're a fan of South Park, you really should check out this game. It's humorous, it's crude, it's an overall fun and great South Park game fans are sure to love.